I want all of us to have the capacity to change. Sure. It would be the cruelest thing you could ever do to make me always be the 17-year-old kid in Jackson, Michigan. I don't want to be that kid. I got to move on from that. Everyone else should get that chance too.
Welcome. This is episode 2 of Defending Human Beings. This is Aaron Nelson. I'm here in Madison with Jessa Nicholson-Getz. Welcome, Jessa.
Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming along with my little project here. And so as I talked about in my first episode, always the student, never the master. Been doing this for a long time, but still always looking to learn from others that I admire, that I think are fantastic lawyers that I want to be more like. And you are definitely high on that list. And,
okay, that makes me blush. But
well, it's well earned. I think very highly of you, and I'm honored to be here to be able to ask you some questions about why it is you do what you do and how it is you do what you do.
Well, cool. Let's talk.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself. We're here in your office. Tell us about your firm.
Sure. So my firm is called Nicholson, Gansner, and Otis, SC. We're a small firm that is located in Madison, Wisconsin, but we practice pretty much all over the state of Wisconsin. There are 4 lawyers and 5 support staff, so office of 9. We're very close-knit. We do mostly criminal defense and a little bit of family law. And with that, we do sort of Title IX investigations, so university discipline stuff, expulsions at the high school level, restraining orders that kind of fall into that umbrella, like quasi-criminal actions as well.
The umbrella of defending people, right?
Yes.
So tell us about you. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in a town that no one should ever visit. It's called Jackson. It's in Michigan. It is known for having, I believe, the largest maximum security prison in the country.
Really?
And the largest man-made waterfall. Those are the 2 attractions in my hometown.
Was the falls there when you grew up?
Oh, it was.
Oh, yeah?
I hung out on what we called the ugly side of Cascades, which was the side opposite the waterfall where all the kids went to like smoke cigarettes and drink apple pucker. So that's where I was.
So down the river, up the river?
Down. Yeah.
So how big is Jackson? Population?
The county is 38,000 people, but the vast majority of that are the inmates.
Oh, really?
It really is a prison town. The inmates and the people that work there compose probably 3/4 of the population.
And we're geographically in Michigan.
Southeastern. It's an hour and a half west of Detroit.
Okay. So tell us about growing up. Your whole childhood, you're there in Jackson?
I lived in another little town in Michigan until I was 9, but from 9 to 17, I lived in Jackson.
Okay. What intact family, siblings, tell us about mom and dad, or, what
Sure.
it was like growing up.
So mom and dad are much more normal people than I am, I suppose, in some ways. Much less normal people than I am in other ways. But that's probably the subject of another podcast entirely. My father was, like many people in Michigan, in the auto industry.
Okay.
He ran a dealership and had some other projects that he worked on. So he was an entrepreneur, which translated into me starting a practice. I think that had an effect. My mom was an ICU nurse at the University of Michigan Hospital.
Okay.
And she stopped working after my younger brother, Jake, was born. He and I are 3.5 years apart, and he is still one of my best friends.
Oh.
We've always been very close. He's my only sibling.
Okay.
And I was definitely a kid that was anxious to get away from her hometown.
Really?
Probably the vast majority of the motivation for any academic success I had was my father's promise that if I just got straight A's in high school, I could go where I wanted for college and I'd never have to come back to Jackson.
And was that the town, even loving, supportive parents oftentimes teenagers want to get away from? Was it more the town, the parents, a combination of all of it? What was it?
So I'm maybe what you would describe as a person who challenges authority by nature. That is a quality that I have been told I have. I am also told, if you get to know me, that I have a little bit of a sharp tongue. And that combination didn't suit me particularly well in sort of a depressed factory town in the middle of Michigan. I mean, I remember just in the 8th grade being told to read The Outsiders, and my English teacher talking about, what a brilliant novelist S.E. Hinton was, and he. And I remember raising my hand and saying, well, S.E. Hinton's a woman.
Much appreciated comment, I'm sure.
Yeah, and then I got in trouble for that. And so that was like, basically, that is a microcosm of my entire childhood. Is I was kind of I like to think I was a smart kid. I certainly thought I was a smart kid, and was decidedly smarter than the bulk of my peers in my schooling. And then I just got made fun of for that and had a bad attitude. So I spent my teenage years like dyeing my hair pink and blue and then shaving it off and wearing combat boots and piercing things.
Really?
Yeah.
So you learned at a young age that authority doesn't always appreciate truth tellers?
That is correct. And that is actually a message that came through loud and clear from the way I was raised. As early as I can remember, when I wanted to do something, my dad would always say, well, give me 3 reasons why. And they can't just be because you want to. So if I wanted to go to a concert, I would have to say to him, it's important for me to learn about music from cultures other than my own. It's important for me to learn how to take the train on my own, and I have to do that to get here. If it's, in Chicago, I have to take the L. So I would always have to explain to him why it was important that I could do the things I wanted to do. And so he always encouraged me to question authority. And then it's kind of interesting. So I was sent to Catholic schools until the 8th grade when I was expelled. And my parents are not religious people, but like I said, the town is kind of a depressed old factory town, and they thought the education would be better. And I was reading Huck Finn, and they took the book away from me because of the content. And
you were so just on your own. You just like picked up a book for casual reading.
Yes.
Okay.
And my father was just furious with that, right? He couldn't believe that the school would take a book away. So he's like, well, let's see what other books they'll take away. I'm going to make the most risque reading list I can possibly give my 13-year-old daughter.
So I want to hear what's on this. Frank Miller, right. What are you reading?
Let's see. I read The Thornbirds. They took that away. Okay. They took The Godfather away. Let's see. Lord of the Flies, I read that same. The Herod Experiment, which was a huge book in the 1970s about co-ed naked colleges and a lot of acid. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh, sure.
Basically, if it had either horrific violence or a ton of sex in it, my father sent me to the Catholic school with that book to see what would happen next.
Really? Wow. So obviously he was supportive of your reading habits, your contrarian behavior.
Oh, yes.
I find it, fascinating that people, he's a position of authority, right? He's your father. And here he is telling you to question authority, which is in itself going to make his life much more difficult. Maybe more entertaining, but more difficult, right? What do you think it is that inspired him about that?
So... all right, and I'll tell you, even early into my practice, when there were times that I would be nervous, I would think to myself, just pretend you're Wes. Well, Wes is my dad's name. And he is definitely a person who has that larger than life personality. You talk about people who have natural leadership qualities. And he's a guy that when he says it's going to be okay, you believe him. Because he's just got that sort of
charisma.
That charisma. And he likes other people that have a spark to them. And, it was always very clear that he would rather have kids whose minds were at work and who were challenging than have people that weren't engaged and thinking critically.
Yeah.
It was just always really important to my parents. And they always said that. And I remember overhearing fights between the two of them where they'd say, well, she's just like you. And I understand that was probably frustrating, but I do think that it worked out pretty well.
Oh, obviously. Obviously in our world, and we'll get into the criminal defense as we move along here, but in our world, there's people in power, and often they are, even though it's our job and our role to question authority, they're not very comfortable with it. They don't like it. It's not appreciated.
Right.
Agreed? Right?
I do agree.
So What do you think? Is it just confidence? I mean, your dad just comes from a position of he's confident in who he is, secure in who he is, and so he's fine. It's the privilege of being able to be questioned because he knows ultimately he has the ability to intellectually deal with it. And
I mean, to be fair, my father's a scotch of the narcissist, so people's opinions about him probably don't settle in too much.
okay,
So given that he has like this, like psychosomatic shield,
sure,
I think it's easy. I say that with love. But no, I mean, he does have a sense of self-confidence and self-possession that I think makes him more risk tolerant, and that is definitely a quality I inherited.
yeah. I mean, do you think a part of that is privilege, right? I mean, I feel that for me, like, okay, like I have this sense, but is it how much of this is coming from me being a old white guy now, but always a white guy, always a guy, always of a certain physical stature. I was always the tallest, biggest kid around.
Yeah, but he's 6'4", so
yeah. So he's the same thing.
College
like,
athlete,
Yeah, how much of that just comes from privilege? I mean, which is fine. I mean, he didn't control that, right? It's not
Right.
necessarily earned, but it's also not just, I guess it was given to him to some degree, but
I mean, I certainly think that privilege is a huge aspect of that because there are safety nets that exist when you're financially stable that,
Sure.
For example, that if you don't have that financial stability, the risks are amplified.
Yep.
That said, I will say this truthfully. I don't know, other than a certain group of lawyers that I brainstorm cases with that you are a part of, I don't know that I've ever met two people who work more than my mother and father.
Really?
My father's work ethic is absurd.
Yeah.
He can work circles around anybody I know. And I think a huge part of it comes from that. And that's something else that was really drilled down too. And as I've, been the managing partner at my law firm, I try to drill into my lawyers as well that, we can't control what anyone else does, but we can be the most prepared person in the room every time.
Oh, definitely.
And my dad is always the most prepared person in any room.
How did you? So when my dad is a mechanic, so owned his own service station. Was working. I know for sure 70 hours at the shop, 100 hours. By some weeks. Because he'd do all of his own book work, do all of that stuff. But I remember growing up being able to visually see it and observe it. Like I'd see him being tired. I'd see him worn down. I'd see him doing physical work. And I think that's how I learned work ethic, right? And now I worry as a parent. I've always worried like, okay, but how do I as a white collar guy teach work ethic? How do I show that when I'm like, well, yeah, I worked really hard today. What'd you do? Sat around and thought.
I thought about things.
Thought about things really hard.
I paced around my conference room and made some color charts on the whiteboard.
Because our work is invisible. But it sounds, was your dad's work invisible to some degree, or was it visible? How so?
To some degree it was because, managing anything is a lot of just talking to people and not, it's not hard labor. Now, there were things that at a dealership he could send kids to do that were hard labor. So like my first job was washing cars, as was my brother's.
Yep.
There's labor in that. But especially when I was young, my mom and dad had it worked out so that she was with us in the mornings and then he would pick us up from school and she would go to the hospital. So he would leave work, pick me up from school, and then I'd sit sometimes for 3, 4, 5 hours at his office while he finished up, and then we'd go eat. So I remember sitting, playing with his shoe shining machine.
But you were like literally observing him work.
Yeah, watching him work.
Yeah. And I worked at my dad's service station. All of my sister did, my brother did, all of us did. Some of my most valuable life lessons were not just the work that I did, but the observations that I had of other, meaningful adults in my life doing work.
Yeah. So, and my mom also is just, she's still like that. They just work all the time, and the house was always whether they're working on the house or working on a project professionally or working out at the gym. They're both triathletes.
Okay. So your mom's a nurse.
Yes.
So your mom went to post high school education.
Yep. Both my parents met their freshman year at the University of Michigan. My entire family are U of M alums.
Okay.
So my brother and I, and then both of them.
So it was, I mean, why'd you go to college? Where'd you go to college? It was kind of written in your DNA, perhaps, or?
Yeah, that, and I wanted to go to Brown, and the feeling was not mutual. So
Yes, I had some places like that as well. But was it ever like, if you're walking around kind of as this alternative, contrarian, lifestyle, was there ever a not going to go to college? Like if that's the clear path, like everybody went to Michigan, you're going to go to Michigan, but you're also somebody who fights authority.
No, I always wanted to go to college because my father successfully linked in my mind the idea that the only way I would end up not living in Jackson, Michigan was to go to college.
Yeah. And there's probably a lot of truth in that.
There probably is. And that was it. It was like, yeah, well, obviously I'm doing that because otherwise I'm going to have to be here.
Okay. So you go to Michigan, and do you know right away why you're going to college, what you want to do when you go to college?
No. I mean,
Okay.
I wanted to be a writer.
Really?
Yeah, I was, and in fact, a lot of my undergraduate education was paid for through scholarships that related to writing.
Like what type of writing? Like novels, short stories, fiction?
And poetry. Yeah.
Okay, poetry.
Yes. I am a published poet.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh.
A different lifetime ago, but yes. And so, no, I wanted to be a writer. And so the deal, again, like, my dad and I'm obviously a daddy's girl as I tell the story of my upbringing. But we had a deal that he was like, look, double major. Pick one major that has some practical application in life and pick one major that you love.
Okay.
So my degree is in economics and art history. I'll let you guess which one was the one I loved.
And I hear the economics, but another part of me is like, I don't know how I mean, economics is just abstract thought about philosophy of money, right? I mean, I'm sure it's more, but how is that any more practical than art history?
I mean, we had to take accounting, we had to take basic print, so I mean, it sort of looks businessy.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah, art history probably seems a little more fluff to those of us
Right.
not involved and not knowing it. I'm sure it's not, right? What did you plan to do? Did you have any plans when you get those degrees to practically use them for?
So I had some vague ideas about, well, maybe I'll get a PhD in art history and be a professor, or there was a museum studies program. I thought, working at a museum would be fun. I graduated from undergrad in 3 years.
Oh,
So
how'd you do that?
I like school.
Worked hard, right?
I took a lot of classes. And I stayed year round because once I moved away from Jackson, I didn't want to spend any
back?
other nights there ever again. So I didn't. I really hated my hometown is what I'm saying.
In those 3 years, I mean, you strike me as somebody who can keep a lot of balls in the air and you have a lot of energy. I mean, did you get to enjoy college too, or are you just like heading to book 18 credits a semester? Like,
Well, I worked a full-time job too.
what?
So I worked, I was an advocate at a rape crisis domestic violence shelter,
Okay.
which was Domestic Violence Project Safe House. It was actually the first publicly funded DV shelter in the country. It was built in the 80s in Washtenaw County.
Okay.
And I ran the support group. I did social work. I don't have a social work degree. I had to get a certification to do that job at the time that involved a couple of weeks of training. I don't remember what it was called, and then did sort of advocacy work helping my residents. We were assigned residents. Get placed with housing, find transitional funding, work with various charities to get them clothing to go to interviews.
Wow, this is like a job with responsibility. You're
yeah,
like,
and I was able to work it because they had a 24-hour crisis line, so I could take classes from 8 to noon and then work a 2 to 10 shift or work an overnight shift.
Wow.
And do it, so I could do both, which was nice.
Do you just find yourself bored nowadays with your like?
Well, I have a fascinating nighttime reading list.
Okay. All right. Well, we will get into that.
But yeah, so when I look back on it now, I'm like, you probably could have just drank more beer in college. It probably would have been fine. You could have calmed down. Like, no one needed you to go that fast.
Were you just like change the world, or you just couldn't slow down? It wasn't necessarily change the world as much as you're just doing what's in front of you, or a little bit of everything.
So in addition to finishing college early, I skipped kindergarten. And so I was always really, really young for my grade.
So how old were you when you graduated high school?
17.
Okay.
But I didn't turn 18 until I got to Michigan, and
Okay.
didn't turn 21 until I had already started law school.
Wow.
So I had to have a note that said I could drink at orientation for law school.
From your parents?
Yeah, because they didn't want me to feel left out.
Welcome to Wisconsin. You can drink with your parents' permission.
Yeah, exactly. But so I had always wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to be treated like an adult.
Okay.
You know, I was a kid that was desperate to have some semblance of authority and to be in a position where I could make my own choices.
But it sounds like in many ways your mom and dad set up a world in which they did treat you like an adult, and when you left that little nest, that's what you were coveting is more of the same?
Correct. Yeah, my parents did, but I wanted everyone to. You know, I wanted to be a grown-up. I really, really, really wanted to be a grown-up. And now I spend my adulthood hoping that I'm not.
Yeah. So did you know finishing up school that you wanted to go on to law school?
No. I figured out that I could graduate a year early, and I was deciding between picking up an English major as well and staying a fourth year or graduating. And I had lunch again with my father, and he said, let's make a list of everything you think you could do and be happy. Write down every career you can think of. And so I did, and I made the list, and then he took out a red pen and was like, all right, well, you can't make a living doing this. You can't make a living doing this. You can't make a living doing this. Oh, lawyer. You can make a living being a lawyer. Let's go with lawyer. It's on your list. And that was in late May. So that day I registered to take the LSAT, which I took 3 weeks later, and then I went to law school.
Wow.
So.
And like by the next September, you're in a law school?
Yeah. So.
You can apply that.
Well, I mean, no, I mean
Yeah.
there
So
was a full
15
year.
months.
Yeah,
15 months later. Okay.
Yeah, but we had that conversation in May that
You're going to graduate in a
took
year.
it
What are
in
you
June
going to do?
and then finished the classes that last year. Yeah.
Wow. How'd you get off the writer track to go into art history, and how did that path stray away?
I had a really great humanities teacher in high school that made me fall in love with art history. I wanted to learn more about that. And, I would say this. I disagree that I'm completely off the writer path to this day.
Agreed. I totally agree.
And that's because I do, and when we talk about our job, we'll get to that, I still consider myself primarily a teller of stories.
Yeah.
I mean, that is definitely a huge part of
Completely.
how I define, what this job is and what this career looks like. But I have not found, I didn't find then, and I still don't find that the classroom is necessarily the best place to learn how to tell a story. And so writing classes didn't engage me
Okay.
as much as learning other things, because I could write on my own. I could write wherever I wanted.
So
I'm sure it would have helped me be a better writer. Like I'm not,
but not necessarily a better storyteller.
Right.
Okay.
So I kind of thought I'd like to learn about things I don't know about, because I think I have this sort of gut instinct on how to tell.
I'm already good at that. Let me work
stories.
on some of these other things that I need to
It's
work
hard
on.
to talk about that without sounding arrogant. I should just say there are lots of things I'm very, very bad at and know I'm very bad at. My job just doesn't happen to be one of them.
Yeah.
So
No, I think all of us like to pursue the things that we're competent at,
Right.
And that just kind of builds upon itself, and then you get better at it because you feel more competent, and then you feel more competent because you're better, and just builds from there. And
exactly.
So, why Madison? How did you get to Madison?
They were the first school that admitted me. I mean,
Okay.
I applied to, I think 10, 11 law schools, and I looked at a couple other places, but they were my first acceptance letter. And then when I came out here, it was beautiful. The Union Terrace at UW-Madison is just spectacular because it's on the water. And if people haven't been there and you ever find yourselves in Madison, you should really check it out. It's gorgeous. But there was a sense of camaraderie versus some of the other schools I looked at. It seemed to be a lot more paper chase, look to your left, look to your right. And,
Sure. Competitive.
and that wasn't very appealing to me. Madison was also much bigger than Ann Arbor, but it wasn't so big that it felt overwhelming.
Okay.
So it was a nice sort of step up city-wise.
You a sports fan to some degree? Did that
Not even a little bit.
not even a little bit? So the whole Michigan UW rivalry means nothing.
I mean, I try and pay enough attention so that I can have casual conversations with my family.
Sure.
But the only people I know in the world of sports are those who committed crimes.
Yeah. Allegedly.
I know all about the crime in sports, but not so much about the sports in sports.
So, do you have any other lawyers in your family? I mean,
No.
nothing. So
No,
you're the first one.
I was the first graduate degree, I think.
Okay. And then why criminal defense? Tell us about that path.
Oh, goodness. All right. So
What's your story of origin, as Adam and I like to talk about?
I'm going to tell you all of the pieces of the story of
Please.
origin, because they're about, when I look back at my life, I can pinpoint like various things that tell me that really this was inevitable. That sounds hokey, but I really believe that. And I'm going to start with when I was 2 and had a talk and play.
Wow.
Okay. I don't know if people remember Fisher-Price talk and plays, but they had 4 buttons: red, green, yellow, blue. Cassette tape, yes, cassette tape that you could play, and then you could put the book on it and read along. And so it was something for little kids. And I had an Inspector Gadget one. And you could choose to be on Inspector Gadget's side, which every normal kid did, or you could choose to be on Claw's side. And I remember hiding in my closet, being on Claw's side, because I didn't want anyone to
So
know.
who's Claw?
He was the bad guy. He was the villain. I didn't want anyone to know I was on Claw's side. But I wanted to be on Claw's side because
But you knew there was something wrong about it. to
I
some
knew
degree.
that people wouldn't like it. I knew my parents would think it was weird that I was.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, I want to be on his side because he's got to have a reason to hate Inspector Gadget so much, right? Like, it
I
can't
want to
just
understand
be.
this.
So, that is one point where I, just really young, remember being drawn to trying to understand a perspective of the villain. I'm using air quotes here.
Okay.
Fast forward to my freshman year of high school and reading Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. And wonderful, wonderful book, any way you cut it. But what I was so moved by, and I've read that book 10 times since, and I still am, is how much care and kindness Truman Capote used to describe the offenders in that book.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, I don't think I'm a good enough person to be able to do that. Because, this was they murdered an entire family.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't read it.
But he's fleshed out these human beings in their whole.
And I remember thinking, I don't think that I have that in me. I don't think that I could love someone, because it was very clear that Truman Capote loved them. I'm not saying necessarily romantically, though.
Sure.
But I remember thinking, I don't think I could do that, and it made me wish to be better than myself. It made me wish I had that capacity.
Okay. That capacity for I mean, you used the term love, but you said before, like, kindness.
Yeah, compassion, empathy,
Caring.
That, and it bothered me. It bothered me that I didn't think I had that in me. I didn't like that. And
Where
really,
do you think that where do you think that's coming from?
I think that, in high school, like I said, I hated where I grew up, and I was a pretty angry kid. And I have some personal trauma history that happened when I was young. And,
Okay.
and I was angry about that. I was angry about everything, and so at that point in my life, the idea of being able to say, like, this person did this horrible thing, but there's still humanity there and beauty there, was outside of my reach and my maturity level.
Was it anything about, you were being misunderstood or not understood?
Oh, I'm sure that was it, that I felt like an outcast, and,
Yeah.
no one knew what it was like to be me, like every other 17-year-old
Sure.
in America.
Existential angst.
Right, So that stuck with me. And then working at the shelter, I went to court a lot, but in a hand-holding capacity.
Yep.
And it was abundantly clear that I am not a hand-holder. Because every time I sat in the courtroom holding a hand, I just thought, I wish I could talk. I have something to say about this. No, I know that's not right. I know that's bullshit. I want to say. And that was not my job. So social work was out because I don't have the temperament for that. But I think that I started to like the idea of the courtroom when I went there, but I liked the idea of speaking. The problem, of course, was that you have never met a person, and everyone I tell laughs at this. You've never met a person who is more terrified of having to speak in public than I was.
Really?
Petrified of public speaking.
When?
All the way through my first jury trial.
Yeah.
But just did not want to have to. Never thought I'd be a courtroom lawyer because there was no way I was going to want to speak in public.
What were you afraid of?
I mean, part of it is so gendered, right? Like, and I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but I didn't want to be the big girl with the big mouth.
Okay.
Like
just the stereotypical, you're going to get judged and now called these certain things because you have opinions. And
yeah, that I was a political kid, but my feelings were always so hurt when I would have arguments and people would disagree with me. I always took it all so personally that I didn't think I would have the constitution to be able to have a fight in a courtroom and then let it go. It just didn't. It was never a job that appealed to me on the front end. I thought that I would maybe get the law degree and do like contract work for galleries.
Sure.
And certainly working in victims' rights, again, at the time, because I'm 18, 19, 20, I was like, well, I would never work for the government because I'm so anti-authority, so I couldn't be a prosecutor. That's really the only other, thing that I'd like. And so I guess that's out. That obviously changed, but that combination. And then when I went to law school, I only had to sit through 3 days of contracts before I realized I would never be doing contract work for galleries for a living. And, but I loved criminal law. That was the one class that I was like, yeah, I want to be here all the time.
And you loved it, and then you became good at it. You were good at it, and then you loved it. Both. I mean, is there?
So, I guess I'll tell you some things, and you tell me if this answers your question. First year law school, we had a legal research and writing class, and part of it required you to do oral argument. And I had thought seriously about just skipping oral argument completely because I was so afraid of it. And just taking this, like they average your grade. I was like, my
done the
written
math.
work
I know what I can get.
We'll be fine. But I went, and they had guest judges there and everything, and they had accidentally assigned both the person I was supposed to argue against and myself the plaintiff role. And so I took that as an automatic out and said, well, I'll just do the defense. Thinking like, I'll be judged more like easier because they know I'm working off notes. And I did it. And at the end, now retired Judge Susan Steingass was one of the panelists. And she was like, you're just really a natural in a courtroom. And so that, the whole panel of judges really said, you should think about taking a trial ad class. You really might have some talent here. And so I did. And meanwhile, there was a person in my life that I was very close to that was having some legal trouble.
Okay.
During this period of time. And I had the opportunity to be in the courtroom and at a sentencing hearing and hear the way that the prosecutor and the judge talked about him and how little they knew. I'm going to cry when I talk about this. How little it seemed that they knew about this person who I loved so much.
Yeah.
And how none of that was said. And the picture that was painted was one about his drug addiction, because that's what it was, and not about the incredible person,
Yep.
And I remember being so frustrated because his lawyer didn't seem to know him either.
Okay.
And didn't have answers ready to say, well, no, that's not right. And let me tell you about this, and I remember thinking if I were that lawyer, I would know something about my client. I would be able to tell the judge who he
You've
really
read In
was.
Cold Blood. You know how to tell that.
Yeah.
You know how to tell that story.
And that really made me
Not that your friend was anything near that. I didn't mean.
No. I mean, it was non-violent drug offenses.
Yes, I hear you. Sorry.
And that, I think, was when I started to really entertain the idea of being a defense attorney. Was, well, wait a minute, I guess not everybody that would need a lawyer is some type of monster. And I had a lot of that. I'm going to be honest. I was really pro-prosecution in my college years. I mean, I took back the night,
Yeah.
I marched and shit. Like,
Sure.
I had the same sort of recoil to what we do that lots of people did, where I thought, I don't know how people do that. And I remember making the arguments for the defense for the first time in law school when I was called on, and not being entirely comfortable about that, but then starting to really see how unfair it was if no one did make those arguments.
So I want to take you back a little bit, and then we'll get back to where we are. You say you're a freshman, you read In Cold Blood, and you find something lacking in yourself that you how did you get better at that? Because you're clearly good at that now.
Therapy, for starters. I actually, and I think all lawyers that do this job, I'm sure we'll get to all of this, but some people think that you shut down your emotions to do this. I don't. I lean into them.
Yeah.
And so therapy is a really important aspect of this job to me because it gives me space to process all of the human emotion and human trauma that we carry.
Sure.
And that's all very real. And I had to work very hard to be able to feel vulnerable enough to try to care about people.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous, but
no. There's a lot of risk there, right?
But it was hard because you have to really open yourself up. And I am absolutely in love with the fact that that's something that we do, because it is such a gift to be forced to confront people's humanity and see people as three-dimensional people.
Yeah.
But I had to work really hard at that, and I had to listen a lot. I had to listen to people who were really different than me a lot and try and figure out what the world looked like to them.
And you had to listen to them to just because you wanted to develop this quality in yourself, or you had to listen to them because that's what you were learning through therapy. When you say had to listen, listening's a choice, right?
It is, yeah.
Why did you feel like you had to?
Because I want to be as complete of a person as I can be. I knew I was an angry person. I knew that I made bad guys into monsters. I knew that wasn't a healthy thing. That Hannah Arendt uses the phrase the banality of evil, okay? And she was, she's a philosopher that wrote after World War II, and about how dangerous it is for us to otherize and turn people into monsters, because then we miss what got us where we were in the first place. And
tell me more about when you say we miss.
We can't figure out what happened.
Okay.
Because the second we say, and she talks about Nazi Germany, obviously.
Sure.
The second we say Hitler was evil, he was a monster, that's inhumane, that's so far apart from us that we don't even need to give thought to how this man could have decided to do that.
Sure, we're not going to understand it.
Then we're never going to understand it.
It might get repeated because we lack understanding.
And I took a lot of philosophy classes in college, and I read Hannah Arendt in college, and that made sense to me that you can either live being afraid and thinking that people are different, or you can live being unafraid and seeing the commonalities you have with people. And the latter is a much harder thing to do, but it's much more enriching, I think. But so a lot of that process was me having to grow up and myself and make peace with whatever issues I had, and take care of myself emotionally.
Where do you think that strength, I don't know if it comes from someplace or you get it or you find it or you have it. Because the strength to be vulnerable, that's what you're talking about, is that's the meaning of the word vulnerable. It's not a privilege. It's not a safe place.
No,
right?
It's not.
I reflect on my life and I'm like, geez, I don't know that I have ever been physically afraid. I've never been in a position that I've had to worry about my body.
Huh.
And that's
it's just as a woman, it's such a funny thing to hear someone say.
It's an unbelievably privileged thing, right? And so I'm like, shit, I don't know if I could do that because I've never had to, right? And so I think of that and I'm like, wow, that's just amazing to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I can answer exactly where it comes from, other than I can tell you that I have always been very driven to try and experience more and feel more and get everything I can out of this world while I'm here.
Yeah.
That sounds like a platitude, but it really isn't.
Platitude cliches. I mean, there's a lot of just they are that because there's a lot of truth in that, right? I mean, we take them at a certain level, but the reason they've been around for so long, I think, is because there's a lot of truth in that. So
but for me, when I was in college, and and as I mentioned, I do have a trauma history, and I found that I was dedicating so much time to thinking about whether or not I was winning. Look, I'm graduating from this great college, so and the person that hurt me didn't do that, so I win. I'm working with victims, and so I win because I'm making the world a better place. I'm winning.
Compare.
And, one day I was like, I'm the only one fucking playing. Like, this guy, the guy that hurt me, isn't waking up every day thinking who's ahead, Jessa or me.
Yeah.
He's not thinking about me at all. Why have I relinquished that much power to someone other than myself?
That I love how you phrase that. I mean, I think of that. We're giving other people power to control our emotions, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are you giving that person? Again, I worry about it because, again, I'm like, it's easy for me to say from my perspective. So it's so nice to see somebody else, right? I mean, I'm just like, wow, like that can happen from somebody else who's vulnerable. There's so much more credibility.
Well, thanks. But that was where I was like, no, like I'm not. Maybe there's an element of faking it till you make it there. I remember thinking, I'm not so weak of a person that I will have my life's terms dictated to me by some person who's not even present in it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be haunted.
So maybe this is jumping ahead too much, but I'm sure you can track with me. When we're in court, there's, people in power, and it's not us and it's not our clients,
Yep.
right? But so often, at least from my perspective, the system, or those in power in the system, are asking our clients to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
They are totally and completely asking our clients to be vulnerable. And I wonder and also worry if many of those people are more like me in the sense that they've never actually been vulnerable.
Well,
They've never, but then they're judging somebody else to say, hey, look, I need you to completely roll over, expose your neck, and to do all of this. And these are people who have had traumatic experiences, if not, just lots and lots and lots of trauma where the natural human reaction was like, no, I'm not going to do that. When I've done that, nothing but hurt comes.
Right.
How do you get there? How do you get those people in power to understand that?
So this is just aw shucks adorable. But I honestly believe you get there by talking about it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And if you don't say it in a way that lands the first time, you find a way to make a different argument. I truly believe that you can change people's minds by making the best argument.
Yeah.
If you can find the argument that resonates with them.
Now, and you use the term argument when you used it before, like you like to argue with people when you were younger, right? Or
I mean, I was totally
right?
that kid, sure.
And previous to this, I was speaking with Ben Gonnering, another lawyer, and he talked about how he was, he'd argue, he'd joust, and I hear that sometimes people tell me, like, you were good at arguing, you always wanted to argue. But I find myself now as a lawyer doing it, I'm like, maybe it's semantics, but I'm like, I don't think I argue as much as I'm persuading, right? But it's not like when it gets to an argument, I'm losing.
I see what you mean there. Yeah.
You know what I mean? If it gets to the point where I'm arguing that punishment doesn't work and the other person just believes punishment is innately something we should do, I'm like, there's not an argument that I can win there.
I see.
Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
No, I totally see what you're saying. And I can certainly, I mean, there are definitely times, and that is the perfect example. I am a person that doesn't believe in punishment for punishment's sake.
Yeah.
I just reject it 100% of the time.
Agreed.
And there are people that really believe that there is some cosmic scale that we have to balance.
Yep.
And if someone does something wrong, then we have to take something from them in some capacity or harm them in some way to make things equal. And that philosophically is a very far divide from where I stand and I think where you stand.
Yes.
And when you get to that point, it is difficult to imagine bridging it But I think even that you can find some inroads. Not all the way. You're not going to get all the way across the bridge, but I think you can find ways to at least soften people a little.
Yeah.
You know.
And so I'm resistant to the idea that we argue. Like, successful criminal defense lawyers or lawyers are the people who are good at arguing. And I take you back to, no, you're a good storyteller.
I think it's much more about the storytelling than the arguing. I mean, I think you need to have basic logic skills to be an attorney, of course. But
sure, right? But the persuasion that you're doing to the people in power is not because you've set up some
it's
syllogism of logic that is just followed. Oh, yeah, okay, now I get it, right?
Oh, yeah, no, it's much closer to poetry than it is to if P then Q.
Yeah. And I loved what you said before about the story about the sentencing in the two-dimensional versus the person that you knew and loved. Like, how do you do that as a lawyer? I mean, that's your job now, right? I mean, is you're representing people and you have to like bring these fully complex, multi-dimensional people to be understood to somebody who is in a position of power and who learns things in a two-dimensional level on text.
Right. You know, I mean, so when I was in law school and I would go out to the bar and I would meet men, I always asked them the same question, which is, tell me a story about absolutely anything. And I was always most interested in the people that would tell me a story that wasn't trying to be funny and wasn't about them.
It's hard.
Because that indicated to me that they were paying attention to things outside of themselves. I still start most of my initial client meetings with that question for totally different reasons.
Okay.
And then I ask them why they chose that story and what relevance it has. And then I ask them to tell me a story about a moment in their life that stands out. And I ask them follow up about that. Why did you tell me that story? What about that was important to you? And that's sort of my way of trying to start to understand what motivates other people is I like to hear those things about them.
Okay.
And engage them in, all right, well, how does that work? What does that look like for you? Tell me more about that. And sometimes their answers are really, really legible and their stories are stories that I can relate to. And sometimes their stories are wholly outside my experience. And then I have to try and find some language that suits my worldview, that fits with how I enter the world and understand it to talk about that. And so, I mean, it sounds really basic, but I think the first way that you start to be able to tell someone else's story persuasively is that you understand it yourself.
Sure. And you get this through this personal connection.
That's how I do it.
Now,
how do you, I mean...
No, I think that's it. No, you sit in a room and you chat with somebody, right? But you're not I mean, definitely I'm trying to read as much as I can about my clients. If there's records, if there's all of this stuff, right? Yep. But talking about that person is so much more valuable from other people as well. Like, right? You're
Family
hearing about it. You're
members.
not in that two-dimensional text, right?
Right.
So the people in power, though, the system is set up that we are oftentimes the only ones that are having this connection with our client.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Right? And for reasons that I support.
Well, yeah,
I don't want the judge talking to my
yeah.
client. I don't want the prosecutor talking to my client until maybe I do. I don't know. I'm just kind of brainstorming here, right?
No, and there have been a few times where I've told prosecutors, I really want you to just listen to what my client has to say about this. Very rarely.
No, it's an incredible risk, right?
Yeah, very rarely, but in the right case, I've done it.
Yeah. I mean, and you've probably heard me talk about this before, and I'm going to probably screw it up, but to me, it's the trolley problem in moral philosophy. It's the situation in which train's coming down the track and it's going to, roll over 4 people, but the person in power is standing at the switch. If they hit the switch, it won't roll over the 4 people. It'll roll over the one person, right? And overwhelming majority of people, when put in that position, they're going to push the button.
Right.
Right? And then you got the trolley coming down the track, and it's going under a bridge, and you're on top of the bridge with another human being. up on top of the bridge with you, and the trolley's going to run over 4 people, but in order to stop the trolley, you have to push this person off of the bridge. And according to the philosophers and according to all the studies, the overwhelming majority of human beings would not physically put their hands on another human being and push them off the bridge to save 4 other people.
Yeah, this is, and actually here's an example of ways that you can change people's minds, I guess. My dad was always very, very pro-death penalty. I'm ardently anti-death penalty at this, point in my life. And he recently told me about a conversation he had with a friend of his where he was arguing against the death penalty. And I asked him, I said, when did that change? And he said, listening to you talk about your clients.
Yeah.
That because, I've told him that the easiest reason that I'm against the death penalty is it would kill me. I mean, I just don't know how I would live through it, having to watch a client be executed. The lawyers that do the capital defense.
Oh my gosh.
The amount of respect I have for those people. That is truly work that.
Yeah, I don't know that I had the emotional wherewithal. I know I don't.
That
it would crush me.
That's it more than any other reason. And there are 1,000 reasons for me to be against the death penalty, economic, blah, 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 racial disparity. I could go through all of it. But at the end of the day, it just comes down to, I don't think I could survive it emotionally to have to watch it.
Yeah.
And if that's true for me, because I know that person, then everyone that we're executing is a person that someone could know, and it would be hard to live through watching them be executed.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't have days where I feel like I'm absolutely nowhere with this goal of persuasion or making anything better. I do. I think we all have days like that. But I have this really just naive idealism deep down that I can't help it. And actually, my husband makes fun of me about that all the time.
You can't help it in the sense of the optimism or the...
Yeah, I'm like Charlie Brown with the football and Lucy. I'm like, nope, I'm going back to kick it again. I'm going to be able to kick it this time.
Yeah.
I may have made this argument 15 times and no one listened to me, but you know what? Sweet 16, let's do it. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's going to be better this time.
And again, we're not here to talk about war stories necessarily, and I don't know that it'd be a war story in that sense, but there's sometimes you kick the ball on the 16th try.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you've certainly had that success, right? I think there's a story, actually, your partner, Nick, was telling me somewhat about sentencing in front of a particular judge, and that, you tried it one way, you tried it one way, you tried it, and eventually you kind of changed that and to get into his world, right?
Yeah, that was...
We don't have to talk about the particular judge, but you decided to, start quoting... old dead white philosophers.
Right. Yep,
right?
Because nothing I had to say mattered, but he was a judge that I knew was quite a reader and fancied himself an academic. And I was like, if I can make this about philosophy, I think I can get him to pay attention to me. And he was a guy that believes in punishment. And so I was reading Immanuel Kant. And I then read a bunch of law review articles that cited to Immanuel Kant, and I found one that talked about the difference between retribution and vengeance.
Okay.
And I was trying, this was a homicide sentencing that I was doing. I was trying to limit the amount of time my client was going to be in prison.
Sure.
And I thought, okay, that right there, the difference between balancing those scales that I, of course, don't even believe need to be balanced, but and being vindictive or being vengeful, that moment, if I can convince the judge that the sentence the state wants would be tipped over into vengeance, if I can use this language from fucking Immanuel Kant, then maybe I can get there. And, it was funny. I had started out reciting some mitigating facts and the judge was not looking at me. And then when I started to quote Kant, he put down what he was doing and started watching me. And then he started taking notes, and he was, I could see his posture change. And my client only received a 3-year initial confinement sentence, which is hands down the lowest sentence he's ever given out for a homicide that I've seen.
Okay.
I mean, everybody locally was really quite surprised by it, myself included. And I really think it was because I took the time to find a way to talk about things in his world.
Yeah.
And it was not an argument that was particularly comfortable to me because I didn't like it.
Okay.
I liked other things, which is this is stupid that we do this to people.
Sure. But that's not quite as persuasive,
No.
right?
So
I think I've heard Adam say it a lot. Listen with the ear of the other.
yeah, that's a good phrase.
Yeah. And that's essentially what you were doing. So you're in law school. You have this experience where you're watching sentencing and to some extent thinking like, I think I can do better. I think it needs to be done better.
Yeah.
And you just go out and open your own law practice?
Well, so I interned at the public defender's office
Okay.
in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Ooh.
And Chuck Bennett, wonderful lawyer, was one of my supervising attorneys. Sarvan Singh, who's gone on to be quite a talented private practice lawyer, was the other. And Chuck told me that I should always start by finding something that I believe is true in a case and build the whole case around that, because juries can tell if you're being truthful or not.
Okay.
And so even if the only thing you can find that is true is to say the state can't meet their burden,
Yep.
you have to start there. And, that first summer, I remember the first day because, they thought, hazing interns was fun. You had to go do bail court. And the Kenosha County Bail Court is in the jail, and you have to walk down this long hallway where there are all the bars, and that was a new experience for me,
Sure.
So I'm walking in the one suit I own, and these guys are hollering. And I'm 20, I'm 21 at this point.
Okay.
So,
Worse than a construction site walking down the
Yeah.
sidewalk?
And so I remember I didn't know what to do, and I was really going to cry. And so I just dropped my briefcase and wolf whistled back.
Yeah.
And was like, does anybody want anything else?
Wow.
And then I went and I, did the bail stuff. And then I finished for the day. And then I sat in my car and I cried. And I thought, I'm either never going back there or I will be there every day for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I remember thinking this was such an experience that it's either going to be something that I will repeat over and over again or that I'm going to have to run far, far away from. And, just the whole interaction, being on the record, meeting somebody in shackles. That's something that is really
Jail breath and jail smell.
well, and you don't learn. Where do you learn that? You know what I mean? You don't learn what it's like to be 6 inches from a human being who's in a spit mask and leg irons until you've spent time sitting 6 inches from a human being who's in a spit mask and leg irons, which I now have. You don't know how to react to that.
Sure.
Yeah, so I did go back, and I really became more comfortable. I got to be on the record a lot as an intern, so that helped me with the public speaking and a little. And
So why do you think you went back? You're somebody that strikes me as you rise to a challenge when you're you don't think I can do that?
Well, again, I'm a person that doesn't like to spend her life feeling afraid, and I was afraid.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to be afraid of it. It didn't have to be that I did it for the rest of my life. I just needed to not be afraid of it.
Yeah. Is that to convince yourself as much as anybody else?
Yes.
Right? We need to live with ourselves at the end of the day.
I got to be, most of what I do is just to make sure I can look myself in the mirror the next morning.
Yeah. But it's amazing what we sometimes learn to rationalize as human beings and right? And be willing to not avoid the mirror or not see things when we look in the mirror. Perhaps people on the other side of the aisle sometimes are better at it than us. So tell me what's it like to be a woman as a lawyer? How is that different, right? Obviously I know my wife is a lawyer. She's been a public defender for a long time.
And a good lawyer. She's a good lawyer.
Fantastic lawyer. Better lawyer than I am. Better human being than I am. I've said that many a time. But I know it's different. There's many, many, many struggles, right? Tell us about that.
So, and this is, the timing of this recording is such that I have a very specific answer that I'm going to give that I probably wouldn't have given if I was just talking about Harvey Weinstein's lead counsel, Donna Rotuno.
Okay.
And a podcast that she did with The Daily, the New York Times. And I read the article that one of the women that had interviewed her wrote saying the question that almost went unasked. And the question, of course, was, have you been a victim of sexual assault? I would say the biggest difference...
Nobody's asked me that
That's
question.
exactly where I was going. The biggest difference between me and you is that Every client I've ever had that is charged with a sexual assault has asked me if I'm a
The
victim.
clients
Oh,
ask
yeah.
you that. The clients ask you
Oh,
that.
yeah. And their family.
Really?
I get asked about my personal experiences so much more than my male colleagues do because it's almost like it's a constant set of auditions to make sure I'm tough enough to do this job.
Yeah.
And they want to know all about what goes on with me to make sure that I'm not secretly in cahoots with victims or,
Yeah.
or that I'm not going to feel bad for victims, which, by the way, of course, everyone feels bad for crime victims. Like, I don't know why people keep thinking defense attorneys are immune from that. I mean, I make victims mixtapes sometimes. I don't send them, but like I make playlists where I'm like, this would help you heal.
Yeah.
You should really get into this.
Well, and maybe that's today, maybe that's a different day, but there's definitely not a lot in the criminal justice system that is about healing.
No, there's really not, So
it's not the place for it. I think it could be.
It could be.
But there would need to be
systemic changes.
And kindness and compassion shown to many people that is difficult to do for some of the people in the system.
Right.
Right. I cut you off. So just think it's gender. Just that they asked that because of gender.
Well, I think I tend.
I don't mean to question doubt it, but
I tend to focus on sensitive crimes. Like most of my caseload are sexual assault cases, child abuse, homicide, domestic violence. They're conflict crimes.
Sure.
So I think probably given that my caseload typically involves a female victim and a male alleged perpetrator, probably I don't know that I'd get that question nearly as often if I did mostly drunk driving cases.
Okay. No, that's fair enough.
This is a hard question for me to answer, and here's why. I don't like to think about my gender all that much when it comes to the way that I practice law. I just want to be a lawyer. I just want to be the best lawyer I can be. And I may happen to be a female person, but I really just want to be a lawyer. And I want to interact with my colleagues as a lawyer first.
Sure.
And so I don't like to attribute differences just to gender, but I do think that is one, particularly with the type of cases that I tend to handle. I think that is one that goes directly to gender. And people use different language when I get heated up than when my male business partners get heated up. When I get heated up, it's, oh, she's hysterical or, she's fiery or whatever. When my business partners get heated up, they're expressing righteous indignation, you know? So I think that I have to watch my tone differently than you have to watch yours. I think there are probably things that you have to do to watch your tone that I don't have to do.
Yeah, sure. Probably not as many. I mean,
but I do think that...
Not because of who I am, but because who I'm perceived as.
Right. So I think we all have to do that. I don't want to suggest that male attorneys don't, but I think that there's more of that. And, for example, the first homicide I tried, an article was written about me afterwards, like they did a feature article, and the reporter talked to the jurors. And the jurors all said, I didn't like her hairstyle. She wore really high-heeled shoes. She wore a lot of jewelry. She didn't wear enough jewelry. I didn't like that pink shirt she wore. And I'm looking at that. I'm going, it's a fucking homicide.
This is some serious heavy stuff.
Somebody could go to prison for the rest of his life. And you people are in the back room talking about if my heels are 3 inches or 4 inches. Is that really happening?
Yeah.
I'd like to think that they're not talking about your shoes. So things like that where it's like, my God, like, I just want to shake people. Can't you just let me do my job?
Sure. No, I mean, it's performance and it's all, we're being judged in ways, right? Well, to our advantage sometimes, and I'll certainly play that if it's to my advantage when I can.
Well, and I make a lot of choices about the way that I dress in trial, and I choose very feminine signifiers when I'm in trial. So I always do wear heels and skirts. I don't own pantsuits.
Yeah.
And that's because I don't believe that you have to be a man to do this job well, and I like to highlight femininity while I do it because I think there's power in femininity.
Sure.
I think there's compassion there, you know. So
how do we change that? Because a part of me is like, oh shit, I shouldn't have even asked that question. Like, is that question? And I know you're not thinking that, but is that question offensive? But my thought is, But we have to ask the question to change the
We
culture
do.
to make people aware of it. I mean,
Well, and let me say this. I think it's important that men ask that question in particular.
okay?
Because it's not like, I mean, I know other female lawyers. And
Sure.
We've talked about this, obviously. It's not as though we're all sitting somewhere in a corner thinking like, they just must not know. We know, you're just not listening. Not you, Aaron, but
that's
you,
fine.
second person impersonal.
Yeah.
So by having thoughtful, engaged men ask questions about that and having them listen to when those things happen, to say like, oh, you're right. You know what? That is kind of a problem that I think does help change it over time. And she unfortunately answered the question. If I were her, I never would have answered the question.
Yeah, and she did not.
Oh, she answered it terribly as well, but that's a separate,
Yeah. So I recently had a trial in which my client was female, and I wanted to get co-counsel involved, and I was looking for, obviously lots of different things, but one of the things I was looking for was a female attorney.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I thought
I know. I'm still mad it wasn't me.
and I thought that might play well. And I remember talking about this with my wife, and she was critical of my considering that. And I see where she was thinking, right? I totally get that. Like, just pick the best attorney. And I think I did. But I definitely thought of that. And I was wondering, like, oh, shit, should I not be thinking of that? Should I not take advantage of that?
So I think, number one, it's a question that people ask. And I actually don't criticize asking the question because I think it's the same thing of, like, look, there are just unfortunate realities of the world, okay?
Yeah.
So, for example, I'm white, but if I were a person of color and I had to go pick an all-white jury in the way up north Wisconsin,
Yeah.
I would think about that.
Yeah.
I think people do think about that.
Sure.
I think that we think about all sorts of ways that we present to a jury. I know lawyers that make very deliberate decisions about their wedding rings because they care if a jury notices that they're married or not married, or
I wear a little bracelet that sometimes shows that I'm a dad.
Yeah, right. People make those decisions all the time, and I think that there's value in them because we all enter the world in the skin suits we're given, and people react to the skin suit.
Yep. And we're, Harvey Weinstein hired a woman.
Yeah.
He hired a lawyer.
Well, he hired several lawyers, but
so he hired a lawyer. The lawyer happened to be a woman, right?
Yep.
And I wonder, and maybe this is my built-in sexism, like she's obviously a very good lawyer. She's a qualified lawyer. I don't, but did the fact that she was a woman, something play into it? Like, it's a tactical decision to decide, look, I'm defending a man in a violent crime against a woman. I want to hire a woman.
I think a lot. A lot of people that hire me say they're doing that exactly for that reason.
Really?
I've even had some really cute things. Like, I remember one client's family saying, at first we just wanted you here because you were a woman, but as it turns out, you had some really good ideas.
Jesus. Thanks.
I'm like, well, thanks,
Thanks. Yeah, so that comes into it, right? Have you ever been in a situation where you've defended a woman, like a battered woman, a vulnerable woman?
Yes.
And was there were you worried about that? Like, oh, here's now I'm a woman defending a woman, and she'd be better off with Nick should take this case.
I've never thought about it the other way.
Okay.
Like, I've never thought, I think a man should do this. More so, I think I spend my time with my male business partners trying to help them with some of what I view as the handicaps of being a man trying a sensitive crime case.
Yeah.
Like, Nick, one of my two business partners is a big man. He's 6'4.5". He's probably 240, 250. Big guy. And when he cross-examines an accuser, that's a pretty intimidating physical presence.
Sure.
And he, like me, tends to do a lot of his cross-examination standing up and moving about the courtroom. Yeah. And so one thing that he would have worries about was, what do I do with my body at these points? Because I need to be very cognizant that I'm not using my body to intimidate this witness.
Correct.
Even though I'm going to be kind of going for the jugular on cross. And so we'll talk about...
You got to ask challenging questions.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Or, they'll come and talk about, I know I need to say that this was a lie, but I'm really kind of uncomfortable having to call someone who's claiming to be a victim of this serious crime a liar. Like, what's the best way to do that the women won't hate me? So, I mean, a lot of my life is just what's the best way to do things so women won't hate me, and women just hate me instead. You know?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, women are, it's getting easy for me to say as, this is an incredible generalization as an outsider, but it appears sometimes women are very harsh on other women in judgments.
Oh, women are extremely harsh on other women.
Yeah.
Because you don't get called like a gender traitor for doing your job, whereas...
Yeah.
And not just by the public. I mean, I've had professionals say to me, I just don't know how you could be a woman and do the job that you do. I don't know how you defend these people as a woman. As a woman. As though, like, my entire existence is inextricably linked to the possibility of victimhood. I must operate every single aspect of my life with the idea that at best I will just be a background victim of my own life.
Yeah, and another side of that is just like that women cannot appreciate due process.
Yeah.
That women can't appreciate other things. Like there's other things that would just trump that all the time.
Well, it couldn't possibly be that I care more about making sure that we don't lock up innocent people than I do about the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. Like, and that was sarcastic, but it's a question that I get enough that I start to get frustrated,
Sure. Now... I want to ask you this because I was talking to Nick a little bit about that last night. He just got a phenomenal verdict last night, and I had the privilege of being in there when that happened. But I was talking with him while he was waiting for the verdict about sensitive crime cases, right? Yep. Sexual assaults. It's clearly like how women are treated in our society is something that needs to change, right?
I think so.
Yeah, and. I guess let me dive into Weinstein just a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, right? We have this national case. It has a verdict, right? And I read briefly, I'm reading articles in the New York Times and the New Yorker or Atlantic, because that's what I read. And it's the message, right? The big message that all these, and the lawyer in me is like, no, that's just one case.
Yeah.
Like you can't extrapolate all of this for one case. I don't want you to extrapolate all that for one case as a lawyer, right? Me as a lawyer is like, no, don't do that. It's just let's take them one at a time. But am I missing something because I'm just so involved in my role as a criminal defense lawyer, as a lawyer?
Well, I mean, I think the coverage of Weinstein in particular, I mean, I saw an article that the title was actually Harvey Weinstein's lawyer is the worst thing to come from the Me Too movement. It's not the realization that men in power have been systematically assaulting women for years and years and years, and they'd had no ability to report it. That's not the worst thing about this that we've learned. The worst thing is that some lady did a job?
Yeah, now you're just going to turn around and bash on.
Seriously? So the coverage, I think, is super vexing, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I don't think that one verdict defines how the criminal justice system works or should. And I don't know that I think there are very many lessons to be learned other than, I suppose, look, there is a trend in this country that we're understanding delays in reporting of sexual assaults more than we used to, the social science of that. Maybe we could take that, I guess you can successfully prosecute delay report cases, but that, of course, is something I've known the entire time I've been a lawyer because I've tried them the whole time. So
I'm they're prosecuting them all the time in my world.
It's not new to me that we'd prosecute a delay report case.
And then in some ways, it's almost inherently by that reporter saying can you believe this?
Yeah.
They're in some ways by reporting on it, discrediting the fact this goes against everything. And it's well, you say you're supporting this thing, but by even bringing it up, you're in many ways just, you're supporting the myths. You're supporting all this other BS over here.
Well, and that's why I had such a reaction to that question, to asking, Donna Rotuno, have you ever been sexually assaulted? Because number one, no one asks men that. Number two, there is no right answer for her to give, which is why I don't get why she answered in the first place. Because if she had said yes, then all of a sudden her entire career is because of her personal trauma and nothing else.
Yep.
And we can all psychoanalyze that and figure out,
Yep.
And if she says no, then she's what, a sociopath that experiences no empathy and couldn't possibly know the harm she does
Yeah.
because she hasn't lived through it? No. Neither answer is the right answer. And that's because it's a bad question.
And the question just it's about framing, which is maybe circling back way when about what I was trying to talk about with arguments, right? It's
Right.
like how things are framed so controls the direction or the persuasion or which way we're going to go.
Right. No, it absolutely does.
And that question is just framed the wrong way to begin with.
So I do think that it's important to talk about it, but I agree with you that sometimes we try and pull lessons and apply them broadly when, so much of what happens in a courtroom depends on the very specific facts of the case.
Yeah. In my career, I've certainly made much, I guess, or had some success in a system in which is very antagonistic.
Yes.
Right? Come to hire me when this is going to go to trial, when you're going to have a fight. That's when you need to hire me. We need to do this. And I've played into that myth when it works out for me to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a part of me that's just not that the lawyer and the human are different, right? But I just, especially in sexual assaults, what I'm trying to articulate is it seems like both sides are so reactive to each other that we've come to a situation in which there is no solution other than to have these big, bold fights because the consequences are so great, so unbelievable on both sides, right? That there's got to be some middle ground. And I like being a warrior. I'm good at being a warrior, right? That's a world that I could profit from.
Right.
But I'm also like, that's not the better world.
Oh, it's absolutely not the better world. And that, look, in terms of truth-seeking function, cross-examination, we are all taught that is one of the greatest mechanisms for truth-seeking. So adversarial system, got it, check. However, a byproduct of that is, I think, something that runs afoul of the Hannah Arendt and banality of evil thing, which is we're basically saying everybody go to your corner.
Yeah.
And whichever corner you're in, never shall that meet the other corner, and we are all totally separate from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with sex crimes, because, America really has a very complicated relationship with rape, but we have
sex.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is really we have a complicated relationship with sex. So on the one hand, we have, Robin Thicke singing Blurred Lines. And on the other hand, every comment section when someone's accused of sexual assault is calling for immediate castration and no due process.
Sure.
It's a very confusing place to live if you stop to think about it.
Yeah, very much so.
But we are so insistent we want to take it and say if you committed a sex crime, that makes you a monster. And now you fit over here and nobody wants to consider themselves a monster.
Yeah. So
everybody goes back to their corners and there's not really room for restorative justice there. There's not room for, so often we substitute punishment for accountability in the system. Punishment is easy, right? You send someone somewhere uncomfortable and you take sadistic joy in their discomfort.
Yep.
And you tell yourself that the scale has been evened and that the world is fair and that the kids can come out and play in the streets again because the bad guy's off the street.
Okay.
Accountability is asking that person to really understand why their behavior harmed someone else, giving them tools to not repeat that behavior, giving them tools to heal whatever's going on in themselves that helps perpetrate that behavior. It involves making sure that they experience empathy, because if you really want to stop crime, if you really want to stop recidivism, the people that commit crimes need to understand why it's bad to commit a crime.
Sure.
And it can't just be because it has a negative consequence for them. That's a very rudimentary way to view the world.
The lowest level of moral development. In the sense of you do X, we're going to do Y.
Right.
But if you look at the stages of Kohlberg stages of moral development to get them progressing through, you need to do exactly what you're talking about. You need to model a higher stage. You need to give the other person an opportunity to understand it, to see it, and then you can ask them to talk about it. And then they might be able to get to that higher stage where we're talking about restoration or rehabilitation or habilitation in many of our cases.
And by the way, to really embrace accountability, everybody's got to be open to forgiveness. Because once the person is actually accountable and they get it and they apologize,
Yep.
if we want them to reintegrate into society, there has to be space for that apology to be somewhat accepted.
They have to feel like they belong.
Right.
I mean, belonging is a huge, huge, huge sense of somebody's self-worth, right? And what we so often do in the criminal justice system is literally say, you don't belong. Even if we're not sending them away to prison for a long time, in other ways we're sending the message that you don't belong in our society.
Right. We don't want you.
We don't want you anymore.
Well, and not only are we sending that message, we take glee in it.
Oh, completely. That's one of the, there are times that, look, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I fight against the system, but I am a part of the system.
Absolutely.
I am absolutely a part of the system. And there are many times when I walk out of there and I'm like, I am not proud to be a part of this. Like, I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed.
Oh, yeah.
Just because I'm like, that's just, can't believe sometimes.
I know. Yeah, I have those days too.
How do you keep coming back every day?
Honestly, my office mates, my business partners, and my associate attorney are very similarly minded people to me. And they're very passionate about what they do, and they're brilliant. The people I work with are just so fucking smart. I mean,
yeah.
And they're engaged and they care. And I come to work here 70, 80 hours a week, every week, and I'm around that. And I think we feed off each other. And then we also, and as I mentioned it earlier in this conversation, we have this group of, 12 of us from all over the state that meet and talk about cases and work together. And I think that camaraderie is very inspirational. It's trench warfare to a certain extent. Like,
Sure.
they're the people that you're building the bunker with, and
Yep.
you at least have people that get it. And if I could make a total parallel back to being the kid in the combat boots, I didn't feel like I had anybody that got it then, but I got a whole crew of people who were wearing the same combat boots, metaphorically,
Sure.
that do exactly what I do, that have my back now.
You belong.
Yeah.
You belong to this community, and it's helped it.
And that really helps.
Yeah.
I don't know that you could do this in isolation.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are people that are, but I don't know that I'm a strong enough person to be able to do it.
I don't know that I am. Part of me, and I'm not meaning this to be critical of other branches or other people in the, other groups in the system, but, judges are very isolated.
Yeah.
They're very isolated in their community, and hear that. And there's a part of me that I get it, but I'm also like, man, I just worry. Who am I to worry for them, right? But like, how do we? They're always going to be isolated. They're always going to be removed from our clients or from our other things unless we engage with them, right?
No, absolutely.
And I find it really, really difficult
To engage with judges?
Yeah, and not in a. I've changed over the years, right? And I'm less and less so that I'm engaging. I hope I'm not trying to be rude. I'm doing my thing. I'm here being professional. I'm not thanking you. I'm not asking you about your weekend. I'm just like, I'm doing this and I'm out of here, right? It just feels truer to me,
Sure.
who I am right now. But I worry because I could charm.
Oh, I have no doubt I've seen it.
I mean, and there, but there was a judge that I'd been in front of for a long time. He's no longer a judge. It just made me feel, I just wanted to go home and shower all the time.
Yeah.
But it was good, but I can't do that anymore. But now I also think, geez, am I losing credibility, or am I removed, or am I making it more difficult for them to follow me up the stairs to the top of the bridge over the, where my client is.
Well, and I can tell you, I do find it somewhat exhausting sometimes.
Yeah.
So I get that, because, and I've had this, I felt that a lot in the last probably year and a half, where I'm like, oh my God, I'm spending so much time explaining things to people who I don't think they're really listening to me. I don't think they're smart enough to understand this. I don't think they care to understand this, and yet I'm gonna go do it again. I am the biggest schmuck on earth.
Yeah.
Why am I devoting so much time to this?
Yeah.
I totally have days like that.
Yeah, and because you're a leader, right? I talked about this with Ben. Like you're a leader in our world. You're a leader in the criminal defense world. So that means you're out in the front. You're making arguments. You're framing positions. You're telling stories that nobody else is. So I sometimes do you ever worry that they're like, yeah, but that's just Jessa. That's just Jessa. She's way out there. She's a unicorn. Like Jessa thinks that of everybody. She always says this, but we got to bring this back into the middle of the bell curve where the rest of the world is.
I especially worry about that. And again, some of this makes me a little uncomfortable to talk about because I think it sounds arrogant. But, at this point, there just aren't, in Wisconsin, there are 6 female private bar criminal defense lawyers that try homicides, that tried the serious sexual cases with any regularity.
Yeah, sure.
There are so few of us.
Yeah.
And, you and I belong to a lot of professional organizations, and we sit on boards of them together. And young female lawyers will reach out to me a lot of the time, and I spend a lot of time talking to young female lawyers about preparing for trial, and over and over and over again, they're like, yeah, but I just don't have your self-confidence, so I'm never going to be able to do it. And I'm like, oh, this is all total bullshit.
I'm projecting. I'm faking it till I make it here.
No, you can do this. You can totally do this. There's nothing special about me.
Yeah.
And I worry about that because, yeah, I do have, I'm very extroverted and loquacious and a gesticulator.
Yeah.
And I know that about myself. And I do worry that, young female lawyers in particular think, well, I don't have the same personality she does. So I guess this just isn't for me. And no, there's no right way to do this. I don't even know that I do it the right way some days. Some days I don't. Some days I do. Hopefully more days I do than I don't, I hope.
Yeah.
But so I do worry because I don't want anyone to think that they have to be like me. And actually, your name comes up a lot when I talk to Nate, my other business partner, because his trial style is so different than mine.
Sure.
And his trial style reminds me of your trial style. And you are much...
He's a brilliant, good-looking young man, isn't he?
Oh, he is. Oh, he is. That there's this just sort of comfort and familiarity that I think both of you foster with juries that, I don't believe I'm relatable. I don't ever pick a jury thinking they're going to relate to me like nobody's business.
Okay.
Whereas I think that it seems when I watch you do it that it's just very natural that people would want to relate to you. But maybe you don't feel that way, and that all feels like,
I want to circle to somewhat about, we talk about trials, right? You talk about trials on your other podcast,
yes.
Right? When we get together as a community of criminal defense attorneys, we talk about trials. We talk about trial skills. But so often what we're really doing is something other than trials, right? Yeah. And then don't get me wrong. I mean, talking about trials is profitable. But that's not really, I don't know, I'm embarrassed about it at times. I'm like, no, we shouldn't be doing that. We need to put more value in so much of the other stuff that we do. How do we do that? Without appearing, because it seems like we're just projecting our own, we got to be tough.
Right.
They're tough, I can be tough, right back. As opposed to, I want to project love. I want to project kindness. I want to get other people too. And I feel like sometimes the people in power are like, oh, isn't that sweet, Aaron? You're just so naive.
Yeah. That's the answer you get, right?
You're just so naive. You think that works. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that you are often met with, oh, that's really naive.
Yeah.
You know,
But we, even within our own community, not just to the people on the other side, within our own community, we are not talking about sentencing arguments. Like, we're not talking about kindness. We're not talking about like client management, dealing with another human being and helping another human being. Because ultimately, like, that's really why you're doing this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you want to understand another human being. That's what you said. You want to, like, get in, like, Truman Capote and, like, figure out, like, okay, how can I do this?
Yep. And I want them to have the capacity to change. I want all of us to have the capacity to change.
Sure.
It would be the cruelest thing you could ever do to make me always be the 17-year-old kid in Jackson, Michigan. I don't want to be that kid. I got to move on from that. Everyone else should get that chance too.
And you're going to move on from the person that you are right here,
Absolutely.
right now.
I hope. I sure hope I grow.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not done growing. And I think part of that is it makes people uncomfortable because it is vulnerable. Being kind is a vulnerability.
Yeah?
I think it's hard for people to be kind.
Because somebody might not be kind back?
Yeah. Because it could be, you're taught that, it'll be taken advantage of, or that there's weakness in kindness. I think it's much, much stronger. I think it takes much more resilience and strength to be kind than to not. I think the easiest thing in the world, particularly because I'm a pretty hot-tempered person, is to just say, okay, fuck it, I'm done with you. Let's set it on fire.
Yeah. You don't think I can beat you in trial, or you don't think I can do this?
Watch me.
Like, right?
I've never worked harder than when I work out of spite.
Yeah.
But, but sentencings, we really should be teaching whole seminars on sentencings. Because sentencings are what we do most of the time.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's where we tell the story the best, too, I think.
Yes.
Or you should.
Where we should, right? Where we need to, right? And we need to tell it in different stages,
Right.
But, we need to get the judge off the bench and come down and sit next to our client. How do we get these things to happen? It seems like, and Ben was saying this as well, I feel this a lot, that I'm trying to, I think I have credibility.
I think you do.
But I feel like I'm constantly trying to convince the other people, like, no, I'm not trying to trick you. I'm not duping you. I'm not taking advantage of you. Like, this, you just need to listen to this. Like, this is really it, right? Mm-hmm. Do you get that like, whenever Jessa wins, it's she just tricked us. Like, the other side, you weren't playing fair. You weren't doing these things. When it's like, maybe they have reason to think that. Maybe I'm projecting. Maybe they don't think that. But I feel like there is this, within the system, people are afraid, and maybe that's the world, of being duped, of being tricked. Right. And that's what they're pretending. It's this fear.
Well, and that's a stereotype that goes along with defense attorneys, right? They look for loopholes, as though the Fifth Amendment is a loophole, as though our Constitution is some kind of loophole that we, snookered someone into believing. But I know what you mean. People do say that, and they say, oh, well, and I'm sure you get this. I was in trial this week, and in closing, of course, the prosecutor gets up and says, well, and he hired one of the finest lawyers in the state. Yeah. And, that's not a compliment. They say it like it's a compliment, but really what that is a giant neon sign to say to the jury, she's lying, don't trust her.
Yeah.
She's tricky, she's clever.
Yep, yeah, exactly.
She's going to pull one over on you.
The hired gun.
Yeah, and I'm sure you get the same comments, And all my answers are like so cheesy and idealistic, but I think the only way you combat that is I really believe this, that the people I work with are more honest than the prosecutors they try cases against, that they are harder workers than the people they try cases against, that they do have more compassion, that they will sit and listen, that they will spend the time, that they do have the strength of character to stand up for people and do it in wildly adverse circumstances. And I think to quote Aaron Sorkin, one of my all-time favorite writers, more and more we expect less and less out of people. And I think we need to change that. And I have tried to start changing that with the culture I've built in my office. Because the way that you get people to believe that you're not a liar is to be an honest person.
Sure.
and show it in everything you do, to carry yourself with integrity.
Yep.
And I think it's even more important for defense attorneys to do that, because we're already starting with this assumption that we don't have that integrity.
Definitely.
And so when I see people talking in ways that I think are sort of stereotypical sleazy defense attorneys, I get very offended very quickly.
Sure.
Because I don't want people to do that, because I understand that there are people like that. But for me, I do, I sit here as a middle-aged woman who still thinks she's going to change the world.
Yeah.
I still believe that. That's so dumb, but I do.
I don't know. You've changed it for many, many people.
You know, and I think the way you do it is,
I don't know if there's any other way to change the world other than person by person.
is you have to be it.
Yeah.
You have to be the person with the integrity and the compassion, especially when it's hard.
Yeah. I think it's difficult to, maybe I'm defending myself, right? But it's you can be honest without, sometimes we have to follow the rules.
Yep.
And we're not being dishonest, we're just not sharing. We're just waiting. We're just reacting. We're just doing other things, but sometimes that can be perceived
As yep. And
know?
of course, you have the obligation first to the client.
Definitely.
When I say be honest, you can't just go blow your case strategy.
Yeah.
But like, I don't mean that, but I do, it's always, I always try and make sure that when I walk into a courtroom, that what I say on the record is with complete candor to the best of my ability, given the restraints I have ethically by defending, by having a client.
Yep.
And that's how I've taught my office to be. And I like to think that
That's what leaders do.
Makes a difference.
Leaders should do. Not all leaders in the offices in Madison necessarily teach that same principle.
No, but that to me is how it should be, is that we need to ask more out of each other. And if we're going to ask more out of each other, then we have to be willing to give more to each other.
Yeah.
Even if people don't deserve it, especially when people don't deserve it.
Yeah. I mean, so much of what we do is leadership, right? I mean, so much persuasion is leadership, and so much is, maybe that's what I need to do, is ask more of those that are leaders. The people that are in power should be leaders, and asking more of them. Well, with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for participating in Defending Humans. I'm honored to be a part of the same group with you and to have the opportunity to chat with you. So
thanks for having me. I'm sorry we talked so long.
Don't be sorry about it. Thanks, Jessa. That's it. Thanks for joining us. I hope you can be here next time when I chat with another lawyer about defending humans. Until then, take care.